Thank you very much. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. Sunday night, about 6 p.m., I asked all of the key leaders of government agencies and statutory authorities to meet me at government headquarters in an unusual meeting. And that unusual meeting was because of what was then Hurricane Isaac and what is now Tropical Storm Isaac, which will move about 100 to 150 miles north of us tomorrow morning in about 12 hours, or tonight here. I almost did not come here, and in fact only came when the Met Office gave the all clear for me to come. It was going beyond Barbados. Regrettably, in its line is Dominica. Dominica was hit by Irma and Maria, in fact devastated to the tune of 225% of its GDP last year. And that came on top of Erica the year before, which devastated communities and led to loss of life. This is our lived reality in the Caribbean. This is not an academic discussion. When I was a child, we walked on beaches and we found cobblers and sea eggs. There's very little of it left because of the runoff from our mainland, because of our sewage, because of our inability to resolve these things. We do this against the background of a tight fiscal situation where the development discussions no longer take place for developing countries, where security people talk to security people, where finance people talk to treasury, where foreign affairs people talk to state, and where leaders do not talk about development anymore, and the choice is for our people. This is difficult for us. And therefore, when the discussions took place between whether it is 1.5 or 2, others could wallow in the ease of an academic discussion. For us, it will have implications for what communities can survive in the Caribbean, in the Pacific, in different other parts of the world. The irony is that we have not been the ones to make or to do the things that have led to the greatest changes in our climate, but we are the ones on the front line. And in spite of that, we continue to have our policy space being made smaller and smaller, whether by reason of the international business and international financial services as a viable development option, now being challenged by the OECD countries or the European Union, whether with respect to our failure to access funding, not just at the level of our governments, but at the level of our citizens, at the level of our NGOs. We populate the global community, but we are only seen for a few days of the year when there are hurricanes. If anything is to come from this, then there has to be equity and fairness among the 7 billion human beings that populate this earth. It has not come in the global community, and unless environment moves beyond just simply the discussion about climate change, but fundamentally about development and justice, we will be having this discussion a few years from now, but with greater and graver consequences that we do not want to have. 40 years ago, we started in Barbados the use of solar water heaters, and we did it through tax incentives to the point where no one thinks about building a house without a solar water heater. In the rest of the Caribbean, most countries still use electric heaters. That simple example showed us how the change of behavior of citizens can make a fundamental difference in the output. We aim by 2030 to be a fossil fuel-free environment, but we can't do it just so. On Friday, we entered last week a staff-level agreement with the International Monetary Fund. And as a new government, we've inherited a situation where Barbados was the third most indebted country in the world today. It means that our options for development and financing are seriously constrained, but our reality to fight what is perhaps the gravest challenge of our times continues. We hope that through our partnership and the sharing of best practices and our work with the non-governmental community, but above all else, our understanding that in the global community of nations, that each state does have the need to be heard and to be given an opportunity to be a full sovereign entity with the full policy flexibility that is required. Sorry. So that we look forward to being able to play our part in this policy framework going forward, but that the voice of small states and the vulnerability of small states is given recognition. We cannot borrow from the World Bank or other major entities because we're told that our per capita income is too high. But within 48 hours, like Dominica, we could lose 200% of our GDP. That is the very definition of vulnerability, if ever there was one. And unless we change it, we are going to see the obliteration of civilizations, or we're going to see problems morph into security and migration issues that the world does not want to deal with. So yes, we have a story to tell, and we hope that there are more people like you who are ready to listen to our reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mida.